One of the most painful and confusing things about dealing with an avoidant person is the way they blur the line between romantic attention and emotional detachment. One moment they're leaning and sharing vulnerable stories, locking eyes like there's no one else in the world, showing up in ways that feel deeply personal, and then, out of nowhere, they pull back, they create distance. They switch tones, they stop responding with the same warmth, and it messes with your head, because how can someone go from that connected to that withdrawn so fast? The answer lies in how avoidant people manage emotional energy. See, for them, intimacy is not something they move toward gradually. It's something they dip into briefly and then escape from the moment it feels too intense. They're not playing games. This is their nervous system doing what it's trained to do, regulate closeness with a push-pull dynamic that keeps them emotionally protected. That's why they can be wildly romantic and then suddenly cold. It's not you. It's not a change in how they feel. It's a change in how safe they feel. Emotional intimacy activates their fears. It stirs up old wounds, rejection, abandonment, shame. So even if they want the connection, their instinct is to neutralize the tension. And the fastest way to do that is to slap a label on the relationship that keeps expectations low. Let's just be friends. In doing that, they're not telling you that they don't care. They're telling you that the emotional pressure of romance is more than they know how to handle. What makes this so hard for you is the inconsistency. The way they show up with intensity one week and then act indifferent the next. It creates emotional whiplash. You keep questioning yourself, wondering if you did something wrong, wondering if you imagined the connection. But the truth is, they meant what they said when they were close, and they meant what they said when they pulled away. That's the paradox. Both are true. Their connection is real, but so is their fear. And when the fear takes over, they don't explain it. They just shut down, or worse, they pretend nothing ever happened. That denial is how they survive emotional overwhelm. It's how they avoid accountability. And it's how they convince themselves that they're being clear by keeping the label safe. Friendship, not too much, not too deep, just enough to stay emotionally involved without the weight of real intimacy. Avoidant people are experts at reading the room. They know how to give just enough to keep you invested, but never enough to make you feel secure. And here's the tricky part. They don't do this out of cruelty. They do it because they've learned that too much emotional honesty threatens their stability. So instead, they master the art of the emotional breadcrumb. They'll say things like, "I really value you," or "You're one of the few people I can talk to," or "I don't know what I'd do without you." These statements feel deep. They feel special, but they're also vague. They leave you hanging in limbo, hoping that one day it'll turn into something more that's intentional. They're not trying to manipulate you. They're trying to manage you specifically, manage your expectations without ever having to clearly define their own intentions. And they do that by keeping the connection warm, but never on fire. When they sense you pulling away or expressing a need for clarity, they'll throw in just enough vulnerability to draw you back in. Maybe it's a late-night confession. Maybe it's a burst of affection. Maybe it's a look that lingers too long, and suddenly you question everything. Maybe they do feel more than they're letting on. Maybe they're just scared, and you're not wrong. They are scared, but the fear isn't just of intimacy. It's also a fear of being responsible for your emotional experience. If they made their feelings clear, if they called it what it was, then they'd be responsible for your heart. And that level of responsibility feels overwhelming to someone who's learned to self-protect at all costs. So instead of giving you honesty, they give you hope. Hope that maybe one day they'll choose you fully. Hope that if you just stay patient, love will win. But hope is not the same as commitment. Hope without clarity is a form of emotional seduction. It keeps you guessing, it keeps you coming back, and for the avoidant person, that's the safest setup. They get to feel connected without feeling obligated. They get the benefits of closeness without the accountability of partnership. You're emotionally available, they're emotionally cautious, and the gap between those two states becomes your emotional prison. You're not with them, but you're not really free to move on either. You're held there not by their actions, but by your own unanswered questions. That's the quiet power of emotional ambiguity. It makes you doubt yourself instead of the situation. Avoidant people don't process love the way securely attached people do. For them, love isn't a source of peace, it's a potential threat. And because of that, they often form connections that are based more on fantasy than reality. They romanticize the idea of love, of closeness, of someone understanding them without asking too much. But when it actually starts to happen in real life, when someone shows up, asks for emotional presence, and creates a space for real intimacy, they freeze, because real love isn't just dreamy, it's raw. It requires exposure, and that's exactly what they've spent years avoiding. So instead of letting the relationship evolve into something mutual and emotionally honest, they retreat into the safest version of connection they know, the idea of you, not the reality of being with you. This is why so many avoidant people are able to say things like, "I think about you all the time," or "No one gets me like you do," but still choose to keep things platonic. They're in love with how they feel around you, not necessarily with the version of themselves they need to become in order to sustain a real relationship. The fantasy allows them to remain in control. They can imagine the bond, idealize the connection, but never actually commit to the process of building something real with you, because that would require work, consistency, vulnerability, and more than anything, emotional availability. In their head, the fantasy feels safe. They get to write the script. You're perfect. They're perfect. There are no fights, no triggers, no messy baggage, just emotional highs and imaginary closeness. But in real life, you ask questions, you want clarity, you want presence, and that's where the dream starts to crack. Reality introduces accountability, and accountability introduces fear. So, rather than face the discomfort of actual emotional growth, they sidestep the entire thing by keeping you in the realm of possibility, not partnership. That's where friendship becomes a shield. It's the label they use to stay close to you without confronting themselves. They get to feel connected, desired, emotionally fed, but not emotionally responsible. And the hardest part, they often genuinely believe they care about you, and in their own way they do, but it's not the kind of care that translates into committed love. It's the kind of care that says, stay close enough that I don't feel alone, but not so close that I have to change. It's comfort over courage, fantasy over effort, safety over surrender. So, here's the truth. The reason avoidant people offer friendship instead of commitment isn't because they're incapable of love. It's because love, real love, asks them to show up in ways they've spent their entire lives avoiding. It asks for vulnerability, for consistency, for emotional presence, and for someone whose survival has been wired around self-protection that feels terrifying. So they offer the version of connection that feels safest. 1 foot in, 1 foot out. Just enough warmth to keep hope alive, just enough distance to never feel fully exposed. And if you're the one caught in that in-between space, it's easy to think that maybe you're not enough, that if you just loved harder, waited longer, or became more patient, maybe they'd finally choose you. But that's not how healing works. You cannot outlove someone's fear. You cannot shrink yourself into the kind of safe love they're comfortable with, because love without honesty is not love. Connection without clarity is not connection. And a relationship that only exists on their terms will always cost you your peace. This is your wake-up call, not to blame them, not to shame them, but to stop abandoning yourself while waiting for someone else to choose courage. You deserve the kind of love that shows up fully, that chooses you clearly, that doesn't confuse closeness with fear. So if someone can only love you halfway, let them go all the way back to their own healing. And you walk forward toward the kind of connection that doesn't require you to question your worth. You're not hard to love, you're just asking for the kind of love that requires growth, and that's never something to apologize for. There's something magnetic about someone who truly listens, not the kind of listening where you're just waiting for your turn to talk, but real listening, the kind that makes the other person feel like they're the only one in the room. In a world full of noise, where everyone is trying to talk over each other, being the person who listens is rare, and rare is attractive. Because when you give someone your full attention without interrupting, judging, or jumping in with your own story, you give them something they don't even know they're starving for: presence. Most people listen to reply. But truly attractive people listen to understand. They don't interrupt. They don't finish your sentence for you. They create space, and in that space, trust builds, connection grows. Something subtle but powerful happens when someone feels genuinely heard. They associate that warmth, that acceptance with you, and suddenly they're drawn to your energy without knowing why. It's because you didn't try to steal the spotlight. You gave it away, and in doing so, you became unforgettable. The real trick isn't just staying quiet while the other person talks. It's engaging with your presence, nodding with intention, making soft eye contact, reflecting their emotions without words. It's asking the kind of questions that show you were paying attention, not just waiting to respond. It's reacting not to impress, but to encourage. That subtle curiosity makes people feel seen, and when people feel seen around you, they want to be around you more. Listening isn't passive, it's powerful. It signals maturity, emotional intelligence, and confidence. It shows that you're not trying to prove anything, and you're not threatened by someone else having the floor. That's rare, that's calming, and that's deeply attractive. People can feel when your attention is real and when it's not. They can sense when you're tuned in or distracted. So when you show up fully with no agenda, just a genuine willingness to hear and understand, people are drawn to that. It's a soft power, one that builds trust fast and leaves a lasting impression. Because in the end, being a great listener makes others feel valuable. And the people who do that silently are the ones we never forget. Emotional control is one of the strongest signals of inner strength. It doesn't mean being emotionless or detached. It means being able to feel everything, but not let those emotions control your behavior. In a world where people react impulsively, lose their temper easily, and wear their stress on their sleeves, someone who remains composed in the middle of chaos stands out immediately. And it's not just impressive, it's incredibly attractive. Think about the last time you saw someone lose control over something small. It doesn't take much. A rude comment, a delay, a disagreement, and suddenly the person snaps, defends, overreacts. Now contrast that with someone who gets challenged, criticized, or faced with uncertainty, and they respond with calm, measured presence. That's power, that's leadership, that's silent confidence, and that's the kind of emotional energy people feel drawn to because it makes them feel secure. When you can manage your emotions, you stop giving away your power. You stop letting the outside world dictate your inner world. You stop reacting to triggers and start responding with purpose. And in social settings, that's magnetic, because people instinctively trust those who don't get easily flustered or thrown off. They sense that you're in control, not of them, but of yourself, and that creates a ripple effect. Your calm becomes contagious. Your presence becomes a stabilizer. Emotional control also communicates maturity. It shows that you've done the inner work, that you don't need to prove yourself or defend your ego every time something challenges you. That quiet strength is what makes people lean in. It makes you the person others turn to when things go sideways, because your calm signals safety, and safety is rare. When someone knows you won't explode, panic, or make things about you, they feel more open, more trusting, more connected. The best part, you don't have to say anything to communicate emotional control. It's in your breathing, your body language, your tone, the pause before you respond, the ability to take a beat instead of jumping into conflict. That stillness in your energy becomes your signature. You become the person who can walk into any situation, tense, emotional, or unpredictable, and still hold your ground with grace. And that silent strength is a level of attractiveness that can't be faked. There's something irresistibly attractive about someone who doesn't do too much, someone who doesn't need to be everywhere, say everything, or be involved in every conversation to leave an impact. That's the power of purposeful minimalism. In a world that constantly glorifies excess, oversharing, over-explaining, overcompensating, the person who moves with restraint, who speaks only when it matters, and who acts with precision becomes a magnetic force. They become memorable not because they flood the space, but because they leave just enough room to spark curiosity. People often think the way to stand out is to add more personality, more noise, more opinions. But the truth is, the most compelling people are often those who subtract. They strip away the need to be everything for everyone. They understand that every gesture, every word, every presence carries energy. So they don't waste it. They move through the world with intention. That kind of deliberate energy is powerful because it suggests discipline, control, and clarity. And when you watch someone like that, you can't help but wonder what's behind that silence, that calm confidence, that air of not needing to prove anything. This kind of minimalism isn't just about speaking less, it's about showing up with purpose. They don't post for attention. They don't speak to fill silence. They don't do things to be seen. They do things because they mean them, and that authenticity is rare. They become a mirror that reflects quality over quantity in everything. How they dress, how they communicate, how they handle conflict, how they invest their time. Nothing is random. Everything is aligned. Minimalism also creates mystery, and mystery is deeply attractive. When someone doesn't immediately open every door, when they don't feel the need to over-explain who they are or what they've done, people lean in. They pay closer attention. They want to know more, not because they're being convinced, but because they're being quietly invited. Purposeful minimalism creates space for curiosity, and curiosity drives connection. You don't need to be the loudest person in the room. You just need to be the most intentional. When your presence, your words, and your actions all say, "I know who I am," people feel that, and they're drawn to it. Because in a world that's always trying to add more, the one who masters the art of doing less, but doing it well, becomes unforgettable. So let's get one thing clear. Being silently attractive isn't about playing small. It's about playing smart. It's about knowing that real power doesn't need a spotlight. Real confidence doesn't demand attention, and real connection doesn't come from performance. It comes from presence, from energy, from intention. Every habit we've talked about, calm confidence, emotional control, authentic listening, powerful body language, purpose over noise, they're not just behaviors, they're choices. And they compound quietly, day after day, and the more you live in alignment with them, the less you'll need to chase anything, people, respect, attention. It'll all start to gravitate toward you naturally. Because when you become the kind of person who knows who they are, who moves through the world without needing applause, who leads without forcing, who connects without oversharing, and who listens more than they speak, you become the person others feel safe around. drawn to, intrigued by, and inspired to become like. This isn't about manipulation. This is about mastery of your energy, your emotions, your presence. And the moment you shift from trying to impress to simply being, your world will change. You don't need to be loud to be powerful. You don't need to perform to be magnetic. You just need to show up, grounded in your worth, clear on your values, and intentional with your presence. And let me tell you, when you do that, you'll stop wondering why some people just have it. Because now, you'll be it. Don't try to be interesting, be interested. Don't try to be noticed, be present. Don't try to chase attraction, embody it. And as you walk out into the world after this, remember, your silence can speak louder than words. Your presence can fill a room, and your energy, when aligned, is the most attractive thing about you. Now go be the kind of person people feel before they even hear you. The kind of person they remember long after you've left the room.